Hello, everyone out there watching again. Hopefully, you're still watching. I've had a lot of interviews, and I hope that you're fans of everyone I've got. I've had some superstars on the show, and today is no different. I have the fantastic David Albury, who was most recently in Motown. How
No,
was
that's right.
how did that role come about?
So I auditioned for the show three times. When I first heard it was coming to the UK, obviously I love the music, so I just wanted to be in it. Obviously, the role I wanted to go for was Smokey Robinson. Went up for it, and it wasn't quite right. And then it came around again, and I couldn't do the second cast change because I was in something else. And then they came around for a third time, we'll say halfway through the second year. The role was up again, and I went for it, and I did a lot of work. And fortunately, all the planets aligned, and it turned out to be my turn, and I loved it. It was just, that's how it came about. But just so everyone knows that it's not always one audition you bang straight into the role. If you want something, you've got to really, really go for it again and again.
So, when you didn't get that role, were you straight away just like, "Well, that's not stopping me. I'm going again. I want this role."
It's more of this kind of, it's not blind confidence, but I know I have a lot of self-belief. You have to, because in this industry you take a lot of knockbacks. Every role I go up for, I wouldn't go up for a role that I didn't want, and I wouldn't go up for a role that I couldn't see myself in. So when I didn't get it, I didn't think, oh, that's it, that's me done. This was me just like, well, they clearly, it wasn't right this time. But there are so many things that go into picking a cast. It's such an interesting and complex puzzle that you have to put together, that you never know when the factors and the pieces will be right for you. So yeah, it wasn't really a kind of like, I'm going to go get it, I'm going to go get it. It was more just like, I know what I have to do, let's do it.
So, how did you feel when you got the news that you had got the role that you wanted?
I was very excited. I mean, it's one of my icons, one of my legends. But it's this thing that so much work goes into playing any role, that for me, there's probably like a split second of complete elation, followed by, right, there's a lot of work to do. How am I going to go about preparing for this? So, and Smokey Robinson, and the role I played, was such a big sing that I knew I'd have to do a lot of work vocally just to make sure I was able to deliver that every single night, because his range is insane, his tone is so unique, and there are so many people out there who idolize him for who for them who he's an icon, all that stuff. So I knew that there was going to be a lot of work ahead. So it's just about cracking on in the right way.
So, how long were you in Motown for?
I was in Motown for 20 months, so I finished when the show finished. Yeah, saw a cast
So,
change in, so it was nice.
if they'd asked you to do Motown again, would that be an easy decision to be like, "Yeah, I'll do that same character," or would you be like,
Um, I think I got all I could out of the show. It was a great learning curve. I made some great friends. I learned a lot about the craft. But I'm someone who always likes to do new things. I think it's important to keep growing if that's what your aim is within this industry. So I think I probably wouldn't go for it again. I think it's also good to draw a line under a good experience.
so after you finished in the role of Smokey Robinson, had you taken anything from the character?
Yeah. So I mean, I think we said we might get onto this sort of stuff later, but I'm very interested in music production, developing artists, that sort of thing. And so Motown, thematically, in terms of the story and the drama, like there were many similarities that I was really, well, it was actually really interesting to research into, because they directly impacted on my life, how I went about my work. And he's such a phenomenal songwriter that it was nice to have something to kind of reach for and really know how he got there.
Amazing. So before Motown, you were in The Life.
Yes.
How was that? How did that role come about?
So I went from the Life into another job, and then into Motown. But the Life was a really, really unique gig. Somehow it was at the Southwark Playhouse, and it was one of the most fantastic productions. I mean, we heard that Michael Blakemore was directing, and he is an absolute legend. I mean, I knew of him before I even met him, and um, so it was a real no-brainer to go up for it. At Southwark, obviously Fringe, you don't, you've got to take into account that the fee is going to be much smaller than a West End. But they'd also assembled one hell of a cast. Sharon D. Clark was in it, Cornell John, sorry. Yeah, it was an absolutely incredible cast. Tashan, oh, they just made so many brilliant people were going to be part of that production. And I got a great role. I was Fleetwood in it, you know, who's this sort of war veteran, ex-Vietnam veteran, and so that's how I got into that show. Just because, you know, the casting was incredible, the director was incredible, and I listened to the material. And I think it's Cole Porter who wrote the music. It's just out of this world.
So how long were you in that show for?
So that was 2 months. So that was about was it about a 6-week run or a 4-week run, and then 4 weeks in rehearsal?
Was that an easy role or quite a hard role to sort of master?
Well, it's difficult because not actually being a Vietnam vet, believe it or not, you know, you have to do a lot of research into that sort of stuff. You've got to play that as accurately as possible. He suffered from things like PTSD, and he had a drug problem and all of this. So it was really important to sort of make sure you play those things authentically, because these are the sort of his fatal flaws. He was actually the way I understood him, he was a really important vehicle within the show. A lot of the other characters around him developed or gained their strength and stature from him, putting him down, overcoming their relationships, leaving him. So it was about maintaining sort of his identity, his sense of his own personal truth and journey and significance within this piece that had so many strong characters in and around him that, you know, essentially I felt leached off him, but in a perfectly, you know, wonderful human way, as people do. But he could never quite get himself out of there, but I had to believe that he could. So, you know, there was a lot going on in that role, but it was fantastic to explore.
Amazing. So before you were in the Life, you were in Exposure, the musical.
Yes. So
how that came about.
So Exposure was a really, really interesting piece. It was the first completely new show I'd done. So it was an original. We did an original cast recording. Again, we had there was an interesting partnership with Getty Images, and they were using a lot of that videography in the show. It had some brilliant ideas, but it probably wasn't. It didn't come out in the right way, let's say. I had an idea and a vision for the show, and it was wonderful to be so closely involved with the writers and the directors on that piece, you know, in a way that I'd never experienced before. But I'd probably say it probably needed a little bit more time before it got to the stage, just because with a piece like that was so ambitious, you really need to make sure that you're nailing everything, and you don't want to be rushing writing or song choice or anything about a show like that, because it was so ambitious that it just needed the time to properly find itself and settle. But it was a great experience, and it was wonderful to lead a company. That was the first time I've led a company in sort of a major off-West End theatre.
So do you think it's harder originating roles, or do you think it's harder going into a role that everyone knows and loves?
I mean, they're completely different. You know, they require completely different abilities and mindsets. When you go into a role that's, you know, someone else has really carved a niche for, you know, you've got to make sure that you make it your own. A lot of people will be out there looking for essentially what they've seen. You'll be constantly compared, you know, whether or not the production still stays at the same level. But originating a role, you've essentially, whether this show has a future, it settles on you. I mean, great writing that's great writing and is established, it can survive a sort of, you know, it can survive a cast that maybe isn't quite at that same level. People accept that, you know, if writing is brilliant, it can lift a cast. But when a show is new and it's unfamiliar, there's a lot of pressure on making sure you deliver the best that show can be, which is why it's important to take the time necessary.
Amazing. So another show that you've also been in is Porgy and Bess. You were telling. Oh wait, before that, I mean, I've lost my train of thought. Love Story first.
Love Story. Yeah. So Love Story. I wanted to, when you sort of asked me to select a few, I wanted to talk about Love Story because, again, that was the first lead role I'd ever done. I'd ever had the chance to attack, and it was at the Old Union Theatre. And I just think it's really important that there's a big debate that always goes on in musical theatre about fringe and you know, profit share fringe, that sort of thing. For me, that was it was a great role. I was living in London. I was able to stay with my parents at the time, so I was able to do the role and not need to find money for rent. So it meant it was a feasible option. But I learned so much doing that job. And actually, the director who cast me in Exposure had seen me in Love Story at the Fringe, and that's why he had the confidence in me to take on a new role in a new show. So Love Story was an amazing show. It's basically a two-hand. I was working with the incredible Victoria Serra. She was sort of playing alongside me, and it's a really famous novel. And so it was great to do a piece that was so intimate, in an intimate space, two-hander, and you just learned so much from it. So it was great to have that opportunity, and I think that's why, to some degree, that whatever way, shape, or form it takes, there has to be a strong fringe in the UK.
So you said that it was your first main role. How was that? How did that feel when you found out that you got your proper first main role?
Again, there's a lot of responsibility that you have to take on board. There's no official hierarchy in any show, but it's at the discretion of each individual how they operate within a company. And but when the vast amount of stage time, of on stage time, falls to a smaller number of people, they ultimately do have a greater responsibility. So you set the tone of a piece, you have a lot more creative input in a particular show. So it was wonderful to do that, and I had a really wonderful cast alongside me as well. A lot of new grads who were very eager, very excited to be in the industry. And so it was wonderful to sort of cut my teeth. And I've also had the privilege of learning from some brilliant leading men along the way, leading men, leading women along the way, about conduct and how to hold yourself within a company and how to support others. So I felt like I'd had a fairly good training up to that point, and it was wonderful to sort of give it a little go within a fringe environment.
So a few minutes ago, I jumped the gun a little bit and started talking about Porgy and Bess, and I think now we've moved on to the time when we can actually talk about that show.
We can, yeah. So Porgy and Bess, I mean, this is actually not a bad segue, but because Porgy and Bess, again, blessed to be working alongside such an all-star cast. We had a few American ports in there. So, and the one I want to talk about is Cedric Neal, who's now one of my closest friends within the industry. He was sporting life in that production at Regent's Park. And he, alongside a few of the other ones, Philip Boykin, who was nominated for the Tony for his role as Crown on Broadway. They were just wonderful energies. It was great having that. I mean, obviously, it's nice to have people in the UK playing roles in shows that, and productions that are UK productions, but it's great to have a sort of partnership as well, because the people who came over from the States were wonderful. And Sharon D. Clark, that's the first time I met Sharon, first time I had the privilege of working with Sharon. She really looked after me and, really supported us. And there was just a brilliant energy in that whole cast. And all of that cast, Tyrone Huntley was cover Sporting Life in that particular show. Everyone in that cast has gone on to huge things. Leon Lopez, who was playing, he was Jake. He's now a director, films. He's premiered his first thing for Emmerdale, I think, today. I mean, everyone's just gone on to such brilliant things, and there was a unique energy in that company that it was just a delight to be a part of.
So, if you could work with that company again, would that be an easy decision to make? It's just like
in a heartbeat. Just the people, obviously, the right production. Everyone does different things now. I think you'd struggle hard to get that group of people back in the room together, just because they're all so prolific at the moment in their own fields, whichever direction they've taken. But yeah, I would, in a heartbeat, I'd love to do that show again. Love to do that show, love to do it with those people.
Amazing. So it's time to talk about your very first show, your very first professional show, which was Lion King.
Yeah.
How was that? Because I haven't seen it live, but I've seen sort of like promotion for it. It looks amazing. How was it being like part of that?
First things first, Tom, whatever you have to do to get yourself into that show live, you've got to do it. Whether or not you go to when it's on tour, you go to one of the sort of regions or whatever, or you just hustle your way into a ticket, even if you have to take a job at front of house and sneak in just to get yourself into that show once. Or you know what, we can apply to Acting for Friends and Acting Charities, and we'll see if we can get you sponsored, because it's a must. It's a must, Tom. It's a brilliant show. So yeah, that was my first job out of college. I was auditioning for it just after we had our showcase. I went to the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama. We had our showcase. We were able to go for auditions. I had 9 rounds, and I was really lucky. It was my first audition. I got it, first job, out on tour, wonderful company like Disney, who are a huge vehicle. Again, some brilliant performers, big international contingent, which was wonderful having that international energy. They have a minimum of, I think, 12 South Africans in each production. So Oh, just yeah, it was a dream first job, and I got to be cover Simba. So and my favorite anecdote, I think, and this is actually my probably my dad's favorite anecdote as well, is that I made my professional on stage debut as a rhino's ass.
And now look at you. You've
Look at me
gone.
now. Look at me now, Tom.
Got all this amazing stuff going on. Like right now during this quarantine, you're doing your is it the Greatest Showman sing along karaoke
Yeah.
stuff with Marisha Wallace
So
and her son.
oh, yeah. I mean, they're out of this world. Marisha and Alice are just incredible vocalists. So that's really nice. It's wonderful to see how the industry has rallied and modified itself and evolved to take on this particular challenge. That coronavirus poses for all of us. It's a really difficult time for the entertainment industry and for the gig industry and gig economy. But it's really it warms my heart, and I'm inspired by all the changes that are taking place. These people who are doing concerts, the people who are posting new content, taking this time to still be creative and write. So that it's great to have these outlets still. That was the first time I performed since the lockdown, so it was really wonderful to do it again, even in a slightly strange format.
So, speaking of lockdown, you have got something planned for after lockdown, which you can't really talk about. But how did that feel when you got told that it was just postponed?
Uh it was okay at first. It's difficult because there's so much work goes into landing a job. For every job you get, there's probably 10, 15 that you go up for audition wise that you don't get. So, and you have to have a certain resilience, but you also enjoy the fact of telling a couple of people, your family and the odd friends that there's something coming up that they'll be able to see you in, because a lot of the work you do in the dark, it's not you're under your own timeline here. You schedule your own days and structure your own days. So it's difficult not knowing what the state of that musical is, because at the moment we don't know what's happening in the country. We don't know when lockdown will be lifted. We don't know if there'll be partial lift, anything like that. So I'm trying to remain Buddhist and about this whole thing, and just say what will be, keep productive, keep creative, keep working. And if I get a chance to perform in that particular show, it will be great. It will be great. So
Amazing. So everyone keep an eye out for some exciting news.
Yeah,
It will be an amazing show. It's really sad because we're coming to the end of the interview now. It's so sad because it's been amazing speaking to you. And something that I've always finished with everyone else is my random questions, which don't necessarily have anything to do with your shows or even shows you've been in, but they're just sort of random stuff to cheer everyone up. So the first question I forewarned you about, which was if you could be in any show as any character with no gender roles or anything, for one night only with full costume and full sound, which one would you pick and why?
This is a really tough question. So, personally, there's a couple of shows that I missed out on. I didn't get to do, which I fell in love with. So, the first one was the Scottsboro Boys. I don't know if you know it, but it was over here for a little while. It was an American import. It was just the best thing I've ever seen. So I would love to be in the Scottsboro Boys, any role, and there are loads of different roles in that. Or I don't know. Let's see, gender roles. Are there any? Maybe Celie in The Color Purple, just
Good
because
choice.
it'd be completely. It would just be, the music's brilliant. I love this show, but just it's a role I probably would never be surprised if I ever did. But stranger things have happened. But it's just that it's just that the show is just so important for so many reasons. It's such a beautiful show, and I fall in love with the music every time I hear it. So for that reason, I think I'd love to do that show.
Amazing.
Make it happen, Tom.
I will. Any producers out there watching?
Yeah.
You know who to cast.
Yeah, thanks.
You should do it. You should do your own little in quarantine version.
Maybe I should. That would be my next challenge. If I do, you'll get a front row seat. None of this no Lion King nonsense.
I'll see it one day.
I know. I'm going to hold you to that. Next time I see you, Tom, I'm going to ask.
Well, I don't know if this might annoy you, but I've actually only seen 2 shows ever.
Well, access is an important thing, Tom, but you're clearly an enthusiast. So
I love the soundtrack.
Well, whatever you can do to get them in there. There's nothing like the real thing. So as soon as we're allowed again, I'd say do whatever you can. Get on Today Ticks, get some rush tickets, whatever you can. Do a couple of ballots, you'll be okay.
Amazing. Speaking of soundtracks of musicals, one question I've asked everyone recently is if you had to pick between only listening to one original cast recording for the rest of your life or listening to anyone you want but never going back to it, what would you pick?
Okay, so sorry, repeat that question. One cast recording.
So you can either pick listening to one cast recording as much as you want and none others, or listening to any cast recording you want but only once in your whole life.
Oh, so I'd probably go for any cast recording, but only once, because I'm really excited about new work, and I'd hate to miss out on all the new work coming. I mean, there are some great scores out there, but I think variety is always key. There's something magic in everyone's unique voice, or your favorite composer bringing out a new show. So yeah, hopefully. I'd have to choose that, I think. Yeah, definitely.
Are you the kind of person that would find it hard, though, to not go back to a soundtrack after listening to it once?
Absolutely. I rinse music on a regular basis. I try not to, but if there's something I like or something I fall in love with, I mean, I'll go back and listen to riffs over and over again, or runs, or particular chord changes. I mean, yeah, there's bits of writing that just, for me, I'll listen to maybe a 15-second segment over and over again, just if it does something to me, if it sounds beautiful or takes me somewhere. Yeah.
Actually, Defying Gravity is one that I will always go back to because of all the risks in that there. I've been on Broadway in the West End for so long that you've got a million different choices. It's amazing.
Actually, that's one show that I probably won't do, but I'd love to be the first BAME Fiero in London. That would be quite cool.
Amazing. So this question it's a strange question, but I've asked everyone it. And do you know what? I'll save that question till last because it's a bit random. I'll first ask you the question I asked everyone, which is, if you could be any Disney princess, which one would you be and why?
Any Disney princess? Probably Alice. Does she count as a Disney princess?
Alice from
Alice in Wonderland.
I don't think so.
That doesn't count. All right, it's probably not even Disney. Let me think. What would my Disney princess? I don't know, man. It's difficult. Maybe Mulan. I do love Mulan. I do love Mulan.
Why would that be your choice? What specifically about Mulan?
Because she just breaks the rules. She follows her gut. She saves an entire nation. I mean, yeah, she's a pretty incredible, against all odds, a pretty incredible female. So yeah, she's an incredible princess, and she's kind of the anti-princess. Like she's tomboy and all that stuff. So yeah,
amazing. Now moving on to the final question, which is the most random question I ask, but I ask everyone because it's fun. You're not going to expect this, but my question is, if you had to choose between never singing again or being a badly singing sheep, what would you pick?
Badly singing sheep, without a shadow of a doubt.
You have to eat grass though. Like you can't be like a badly singing sheep that eats. You'd have to be a proper sheep living in a field eating grass.
Oh, a badly singing sheep or never singing again as a human.
Yeah.
But as a sheep, would I be conscious of the fact that I was singing? But I wouldn't just be like.
You could choose which songs to sing.
Okay, but it would just sound like a. I think I probably have to choose badly singing sheep. I mean, singing is such a glorious act. I love it. I love it. It's feels like part of my life force. So I think even if I was completely tone deaf, I'd be one of those people who sings and sings and sings. And I try and tell everyone, even if you think you're a bad singer, keep singing, because there's no greater expression of the soul than just to break into song for whatever reason. No one does it. It's completely out of this world and heightened. But if we get more people doing that in everyday life, I think the world will be a better place, regardless of.
So we should make life just one big musical.
Life, well, maybe not one big musical, but because musicals can be quite draining. But I think we should encourage people to sing whenever they feel the urge to. It's good for the soul.
And if anyone wants that, you're doing your Greatest Showman sing-alongs, which they can find on your Instagram, right?
It's not taking place on my Instagram, but I'm posting it on the Instagram. There's a link to it on West End Musical Brunch. There's another one happening on the 9th of May. I think there's one happening the week before, maybe on the 2nd as well. But it's not a Greatest Brunch, it's just a West End Musical Brunch sing-along. So I'd tell anyone, advise anyone to like crack on with that. It's a really good, really good.
And how much is that? Do you know?
Pardon? I think it's, how much are the tickets?
Yeah.
I think they're $7.50. You have to double check that. There's a Design My Night link on the page.
Okay, cool. I'll try and find that link for everyone. I'll try and put it in the description of this video, hopefully, so people can find it. And yeah, that was my final question, sadly. It's been amazing interviewing you. You've been such a good person to interview. And if anyone wants to find you on social media, how do they?
So just on Instagram, Twitter, on Facebook, David Albury. You shouldn't have too much issue finding me on there. So yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, thank you for coming on the show. I think there's only one more thing to ask, and that's what's your advice for everyone at home right now because of this coronavirus?
I think advice for everyone back home right now, whatever you're doing, just try and keep your mind active, try and keep a positive mindset, check in on friends and family, obviously, and really use this sort of enforced pause that we've all had to figure out exactly the way you want to go about what you want to go about. Like if you've got a challenge or a dream or a passion, figure a way that you can do this now and start it now so that when you go back into the crazy hectic life, which will eventually resume inevitably, you have something that you own that means something to you that you've developed in this time of real sort of challenge and adversity, because it will be something really special.
Amazing. And to everyone else watching at home, this video, I've made it free. I've had talks with lots of people that were like, maybe you should charge people to watch this so you can make money for charity. But I made it free precisely because of the fact that I know that people are struggling at the moment. But if you can help to raise money for Acting for Others, which is a charity that this is for, I've put a link in the description below. Do you know much about Acting for Others? Because it helps you guys, doesn't it? Actors like you.
Yeah, so Acting for Others, we often do collections in almost every show I've been in. We've had a bucket collection for Acting for Others. They're a wonderful charity. They do great work for people who have fallen on hard times to no fault of their own. It's a charity that's been around for ages, so you know it's really well structured. They support a variety of different charities, so under the sort of Acting for Others umbrella. So it really does great work and targets portions of the community and the creative community that might need assistance at particular times of hardship. So it's a wonderful cause, and I fully commend you doing this.
Thanks. Yeah, so everyone, if you can donate as much or as little as you can, it helps a lot. And I guess that's it. That's all that we need to say. But thank you for coming on the show.
Absolute pleasure.
It's been absolutely amazing. And I think I'll just finish off by saying to everyone, remember my one piece of advice.